All righty, peace and blessings, family. Welcome in, welcome in. I am Key, and today I'm sitting with someone I've shared life with on so many levels. Someone who's gone from feeling drained, disconnected, and caught in loops of addiction and confusion to becoming one of the clearest, calmest, most grounded men I know. This is my brother Baba Rave, and his journey is one of those that doesn't just inspire you, but it humbles you because it wasn't just about changing what he ate, it was about remembering who he was. So if you've ever felt stuck in your head, battling cravings, addictions, anxiety, or just feeling like something in your life is off, but you can't name it, this conversation might just shift everything for you. Baba, thank you for being here today. I appreciate you. And let's dive right in, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool, cool. So let's take it back, man. So before all of your evolution and shifts even started, how were you living day to day, mentally, emotionally, physically? What was going on?
Right. So most people see me nowadays and they they either think I come from some very rich family or some far off land, very mystical place or something like that. But actually I'm from the hood. I'm from what we know as the ghetto. Actually, Killeen Fort Hood is the actual name of where I'm from, the actual hood, where it's the 5th of July. So hearing the fireworks yesterday, I still even get a little bit of remembrance of how I used to have like some PTSD, being around all these military people and being in the hood. I couldn't tell if the difference what the difference was between a gunshot and a firework. Sometimes when I'm like resting my head at night on the 4th of July. So that's that's where I come from is being uh a experiment of a society called being in the hood or in the ghetto or in the projects, right? I come from living in apartments and uh like literally seeing all this danger and violence happening outside of the apartments and having like before I was even 18 got shot at like 5 times. I shot at other people as well 5 times, and that was just the nature of the lack of unity that was going on in my environment. That was the nature of the separation. I mean, I have like five of my best friends have been unalived. Yeah, at this moment, that's what I know of so far. I haven't checked in a minute, but like five of my best friends, childhood best friends, have been unalived growing up, and so it's just like one of those things where I might look like a certain way now, but it's because of a certain journey that I went on. So growing up, eating all day, being distracted all day with different things, but I also was an athlete as well, so that kept me a certain level of militance and disciplined. And being in a military town, there was a certain level of influence from beings that were militant as well. It was just that a lot of beings were using that militance towards separation rather than unity. So there was no real sense of wholeness and no real sense of self knowledge. It was all very much based on the ego and the not self, and constantly eating to numb one's emotions because where I grew up, there wasn't no awareness of the right brain of creation of intelligence. It was more of a strict algorithm where you have to just work, and if you work harder, you'll get to a certain point of satisfaction because your ego will be satisfied. Never any type of transcendence, never any type of self realization or uh, any type of self inquiry in existence at all. And so, yeah, I mean, when we talk about coming from the matrix and breaking out of the matrix, I definitely got my fair dose of what it was like to be um, inside of and of the world or of the Matrix or of being a part of the Agent Smith programming society. Just the constant um, creating of babies, constantly having sex, constantly eating, constantly. sleeping constantly, just numbing and all that, levels of what we would call like samsara, or what some people call suffering, or some people call struggle, or some people call negative emotions. And these some people are just different cultures around the world. But I got my fair share of that deep in the hood inside of Texas. And that's definitely where I come from as far as the journey into this lifetime and into this dream time has taken me to get those revelations and get a groundingness on what people mean when they say people are struggling, or people are in dis-ease, or people are, because I lived that. And it wasn't it was a certain sense of like I lived it unconsciously because I was growing up in it. But at the same time, because we're children, we are sensitive to all of that, and we are literally just sponges soaking up all that. And so you literally can have a whole lifetime to reflect all that you've soaking up in that first 21 years of life.
Gotcha. Okay. And just to give people like maybe some more clarity, what are like some specific imbalances that you were dealing with like in your body and maybe just in your life, in your head,
Okay,
perspective
cool.
wise, anything,
Mhm.
some symptoms even?
So confusion for sure. um I would say confusion was some of the most, like fog, confusion, um emotional lack of support. um I think that was the main thing. Obviously, like feeling gluttonous as well, feeling very like heavy as well. I was never like very fat, but I did have like some really thick love handles at one point. But I was an athlete again, so I had to like always burn it off. And it was a lot of just like lethargy, I would say, to a certain degree. A lot of lethargy because you're being a warhorse at this young age, and so you're eating 4, 5, 6 times a day. You're working it off 3 times a day. You know what I mean? So a lot of lethargy, which leads to a lot of confusion, especially if there's not a healthy environment for you to actually balance out any of that, which I personally didn't have. Uncleanliness as well, feeling just a certain level of not knowing the how to manage anything, how to actually take care of your own economics, your own household and such, which is your temple. Can you still see me and hear me?
I can still hear you, but your video went frozen, but it's all good.
That's what I see. Maybe it'll come back on.
Yeah, we'll
But
just
yeah,
keep it going.
yeah, cool. Yeah, that was the main thing, is a certain degree of confusion, a certain sense of uh a lack of self-awareness. And I'm trying to be a little bit more specific. So like the pains within that could be like, I'm thinking about like physical pains was definitely just the lethargy within inside of the fascia and the muscles, and the acids like always corroding in there nonstop. The highs from the sugars, bringing on more and more fog. Yeah, that was definitely all a part of the childhood.
Gotcha. Okay. And okay, before we move on to out of your like childhood and stuff, to be even more
Yeah,
specific, what kind of things were you like consuming back then in food and
yeah.
just like maybe content wise, emotionally wise, energetic wise, what were you like giving your energy to and just consuming?
So waking up, getting immediately on the TV screen, eating donuts, and like it really does surprise me that I still see this in the modern day world. But like when I see people wake up and immediately eat on something, I get reminded that that's what I did for 21 years of my life, was wake up and immediately get to eating proteins like eggs and bacons and fats, and so all the animal products. But on top of that, there was no sense of health whatsoever at all in my childhood. So like my mom would buy like 10 pizzas the day that the pizzas were like half off. I can't remember which store, but 10 pizzas, and then we would have leftover pizzas for the rest of the week because she didn't want to cook after she got home from work. So we would have pizza literally fast food pizza every single day, Monday through Friday for dinner. A lot of weeks. If she was cooking, it was hamburger helper. It was just that ground beef and stuff like that, that hamburger helper stuff. And sometimes she didn't cook. We didn't get pizzas. So what would I eat? I would eat these things called MREs, which are pretty much um, the military gives pre-made food that all you have to do is pretty much like put it like it's in these like really ugly containers, and all you have to do is put it in the microwave. And so if I didn't want the MREs, guess what I was eating? I was eating peanut butter for dinner. You know what I mean? And so school lunch, school breakfast, and I was eating like Twinkies and all types of like chips and stuff like that before school. And then I would get to school, and then drinking all the milks and eating all the school foods. And I got to a point where I was really enjoying school food because it was so like I didn't have anything at home besides like peanut butter and maybe some nasty looking jelly to eat, and maybe some chocolate, really nasty chocolate to eat or something like that. Like there was no sense of health at all. And then consumption nonstop when it came to the TV screens always being on. In my childhood, we had like five TVs in the living room because we had five different people that wanted to watch five different things, and my mom didn't want us to have TVs in our room, so it was like five different TV screens literally going on at the same time. It reminds me of the architect inside of the Matrix. How there's just so many screens going on and everything's playing something different. So it was a nonstop simulation reality for me.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. And I'm sure, a lot of people can relate to this, especially out here in the Western world. So, wow, that's a lot right there for sure. Just growing up, not having any type of health support at all to kind of just like, and did you have like a father figure too or anything in your
Nah,
life?
no father figure. No father figure, just a mom. I didn't have a father figure. I never met my dad. Only was pretty much like when it got to like 7, 8, 9 years old, I started recognizing that it was either the streets were gonna raise me or my neighborhood parents were gonna raise me, because my mom already had three other children after me, and I was the oldest out of all of my brothers and sisters. Well, no sisters. I mean, no brothers, just sisters. The oldest, and I was the only man in the house. So it was like, okay, well, they're living a whole different reality. I can like just go into the streets and like learn from the streets and kind of get that street code to like kind of teach me some things that I know my mom has no clue of. And
Mm,
so that was pretty much like my mom only knew so much, being just a religious like worker lady, army lady. Um, and so I can only get so much knowledge from her because she only experienced so much of this world, and the rest of my knowledge I had to get from other families and other things happening in the streets that kind of taught you certain levels of what this life is about. So yeah, no father
mm.
figure to apply any disciplines.
Gotcha, man. Okay, and then was there like a specific moment where you realized like, something's just not right. Like I'm not supposed to be feeling this way.
Mm,
And if
no, well, I wasn't a specific moment. It was through trial and erroring with bodybuilding later on, as I was leaving the hood and was living in Austin. I was bodybuilding, and I was like, just like seeing how I could be more vibrant rather than just eating all this meat and junk food to bodybuild. It was like I was seeing people like models, male models, like out in the tropics. And I was like, it's not just that they have taken in all the protein in the world and have like worked their ass off to get that figure, but there's a certain level of vibration to them. There's a certain level of relaxation to them that I don't know what it is, but I got to figure that out because like I don't think I have that yet. And so there was a level of like, okay, let me experiment with these foods a little bit, and then eventually I was like, okay, let me go to pescatarian. And I remember after a couple weeks of being vegan, I went to the gym to play basketball,
Hmm.
And I was still bodybuilding and everything at the time, but I was just vegan for a couple weeks, and literally I felt like I was swinging from trees on the basketball court. Like it literally felt like I was Tarzan, and everybody else, like 99% of the people probably have never tried vegan at that court the whole day. But me, I tried it for 3 weeks after being pescatarian for a little bit, and I was just everywhere. It was like I was the first one on getting back on defense, the first one on the fast breaks. It was like I was grabbing rebounds from above the rim, and it was just like I didn't know what to think. But I just remember everybody was looking at me like, "Yo, how did this dude have this much energy?" And then I was like
Wow.
reflecting on it after, like, yo, this vegan stuff got me feeling like I'm kind of like floating a little bit. You know what I mean? But not in a bad way, like in the head, but literally like my body feels like it can mobilize in a certain way. And so that's when I did kind of have that aha moment that there is a certain level of lightness that is gonna come
Mm.
from not eating all the junk food and stuff like that. That was when there was a actual physical experience that was like in my contemplative realm that, oh wow, okay, there's a level that I can experience, that I can actually feel, that is giving me this revelation that I hadn't felt ever before in my life. Like I was always wondering why I was never the fastest sprinter. I was always good at long distance, but I was never the fastest sprinter. And I was always wondering, like, why can't I stretch as deep as other people? And why can't I run as fast as other people? And so there was a level of like wonder the whole time. But then when that moment kicked in after a couple weeks of being vegan, uh it a lot of things opened up. It was like, okay, what's next? Like, what else can we do with just the thought of diet change or the thought of like health in general, rather than just for bodybuilding, but just health in general. There was a click on of like there's something to this health thing that probably has a lot more depths that I'm about to get into.
Right, gotcha. Okay. And before we move past the veganism and the plant-based kind of
Hmm.
introduction, I want to know, so you said you were coming from like heavy protein diet, junk food, pizzas and stuff like that to
Yeah.
like plant-based. And were those 3 weeks of, or just maybe that third week of you feeling really light? First question is, what kind of plant-based diet did you go to? Were you just eating like the vegan junk, or were you eating like healthy whole plant foods, or what did that
Vegan
look?
junk, vegan junk at first for sure, but it was high protein vegan junk. So like I was eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of rice, and a lot of like the tofu and the pea protein stuff and the burgers and stuff like that. But it wasn't like nothing was clean. It was junk, but it was to a certain degree like I have to be lean. It was like lean junk. Yeah, it was lean junk. Like I wouldn't like just go crazy with I couldn't go crazy with the junk food because I was already disciplined enough that I'm gonna lose my abs if I go too crazy with junk food. But it wasn't clean. It was just lean. But it was still junk. Like I would go to Mod's Pizza and get as much vegetables on a pizza as I can and stack it up, but I would have a whole bunch of the uh the diet cheese on top. And so it was a certain level of like, okay, there's a junky nature to this, but at least I know like I'm not gonna go too much into, just eating just Oreos. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Okay, cool. And so like what kind of caused you to like what kind of cracked the door open after that to made you maybe realize like there's like a better way of eating on this diet, like what kind of planted that seed for you to kind of get off all of the vegan junk food and just
Hmm.
maybe start getting a little bit healthier in your diet?
Hmm. Um, so it got to a point where I wanted to learn more about the emotional spectrum of things because I was in a relationship my kind of like my first real relationship at like 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I was getting her to go vegan, but like, and I was feeling really light on it, and it wasn't, but it was still junk vegan, and we still smoked weed, drunk alcohol, etc. Because I was just the nature of being young and successful with money and such, and there was a nature of not understanding the levels of emotion to a certain degree, and not understanding the levels of like, okay, like, do I have any like physical things that are wrong with me that are like deteriorating? I know that like this vegan lightness is like making me question more things about reality for sure. And I was already kind of like getting into like some surrender modes of like this knowing that I don't know that much about life. Uh Compared to how much I could know. You know, it's infinite knowledge out here, infinite data out here. So there's tons of stuff, especially when you're just so young and fresh to the world. And so there was a nature of like, okay, let me see what it is that this can like lead towards. So there's like me in the vegan junk, and then doing some studying and actually seeing that, oh, people do juice fasts. And I was like, no way, like that's crazy. Like I would lose all this muscle. I would, I'm a vegan, but I'm not, and then I would hear about, oh, people actually do water fast. And then I was like, oh, I've heard about that in the Bible and such, and in different holy scriptures and such. And then, they was talking about the subtle energy of emotions and certain like things of that nature, and getting more vibrant foods. And so all these things started coming up. As you get lighter, things come up into your reality. So like you've hit a new threshold, and new things will come up and be like, okay, you're ready to get introduced into this now. And so step by step, I started, like, I didn't even know what avocado, like, my funniest thing is in my reality now is that I didn't know what an avocado was living in Texas. I didn't know what an avocado was. So I was like 21 or 22 years old. It was crazy. Like, I'm living in Texas. How do I not know what an avocado is? Uh, but then I got hold of like, hey, there's these things called avocados. You can throw them in, this or that, and it makes it's so good. Yeah, you heard of guacamole? That's what it's made of. And I'm like, oh wow, you know what I mean? So new fruits and new foods started being introduced to me. And granted, like I said, I didn't grow up around anybody that knew how to cook, so I didn't have these types of conversations with people in general of like, how do you even like know the difference between this squash and that squash, or this vegetable and that vegetable. All that started just like kind of slowly revealing itself to make it make sense that there's a whole world to this taking care of this body that has been neglected, and that is available if I choose to accept it. Hopefully that answered the question. Hold up. You're I can't hear you. I can hear you now.
Okay, my mic ended up dying, so sorry if the quality's not as good, but you can hear me straight though?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so just to kind of paraphrase, so you were eating the vegan junk food, you tried it out, you started feeling lighter. And
Mm.
how long were you on this diet until you started seeing the juice feasting and kind of like the raw foods and these vegetables and stuff?
Yeah, probably like a year before I started. It was probably like a year of just like junk vegan before like healthy vegan started introducing itself into me, into my reality. But even there was like a weaning off of that stuff, and then slowly starting to understand like, oh, you can do one meal a day, and that took like, to actually transition to that was probably another year after that. So a year of like fully just vegan junk.
Hmm.
And but lean, like I said, because I was a bodybuilder, so I knew about the what to eat to like. keep a certain level of shreds going on. Um,
Right.
but it wasn't for my organs, it wasn't for my glands, it wasn't for my GI tract, it wasn't for my nervous system. It was only for the muscles and my taste and my parasites and stuff like that at the time. So yeah, I didn't even get into parasites until like after the one meal a day thing came around, and then parasites slowly started coming into my reality.
Gotcha. Okay. So what kind of like how did this shift yourself and your life and your reality as you started like eating maybe like one meal a day and just eating more like fresher whole plant foods and maybe some detox symptoms are
Mhm.
coming and stuff like that. So how did this begin to like shift your interest in life and just kind of how your evolution is like as a being?
Yeah. I mean, it made me actually evolve as an actual being rather than a physical body. Living in a physical reality actually evolved my actual consciousness to a certain degree because there was a level of lightness that allowed me to learn the breath work, learn the meditation, go deep into stretching or yoga, and actually like relax to a certain degree. So like I was smoking, like there was a point where I was big time on the smoke and I was
Hmm.
plugging, selling a lot of weed and such. And this was before I even was vegan. But then, like, as I became vegan, a lot of people was still trying to smoke me out from the hood and such when I went back for a brief period of time. And
Hmm.
I was just like, yo, my consciousness can't do these same conversations over and over again. Like, I can't
Mm.
be part of this, just trying to scam and do this and that all day long and trap all day long.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's not feeding my soul. So there was a level of
Mm.
when, well, as you get in more and more solar foods into your body, you can actually stay in the sun longer. You can stay in the soul longer, and your actual soul with inside of your consciousness is becoming more and more online. And so, like conversations that aren't soulful are going to turn you off. Things that you do that don't resonate with the level of intelligence that reflects the soul is going to turn you off. And so, yeah, it got to a point where my soul was turning on so much that I was able to meditate and contemplate about what life is and study life and start to get into the esoterics and the occult side of just studying nature itself. We have the basics premises of nature, like, oh, it's green, it's beautiful, and it's relaxing. But then there's a deeper level of like a symbiotic relationship that everything in nature has with other things in nature that's very magical and very um, reflective of our own internal intelligence as well. And so that led me to my spiritual journey practically. The availability to become lighter in my body allowed the open, because pretty much I don't think I would ever have gone actually into my spiritual journey or had a spiritual awakening or such if I didn't have if I had the body that I had growing up. Like they just wouldn't equate. Like you wouldn't be able to access those higher sensors of your kundalini at all if your body is just so out of harmony with itself that it's all of its energy isn't trying to make its way up and bloom the flower. It's like just trying to work on maintaining the roots so you can survive. And so I wouldn't have ever have been able to access just the inquisitive nature of what the spiritual journey is if I didn't slowly move into being a junk vegan and then letting that junk vegan open me up to like more of a healthier vegan.
Right. Okay, cool.
Hmm.
So you mentioned the breath, and you talk a lot about the breath too in your social medias, and even when we lived together. For those that don't know, me and him lived together for a little bit, and
For like
he
a whole year
actually,
almost, on and
yeah,
off.
basically, yeah. And so he actually introduced me, pretty much introduced me into just like having and building relationship, and not only a relationship with my breath, but a healthy relationship with my breath. So I just want to ask you like more about that and like what actually got you interested in that? And what did that shift for you when you started just kind of connecting with your breath more? And did it feel kind of weird at first and like uncomfortable and stuff like that? And how did that really shift for you in your life and your emotions and your journey?
Right. So like I was already in the dark night of the soul, being the only one in my hood that like I knew that was like on some plant-based type of energy and on some like free spirited like energy at this point. So because I was the only one and didn't know how to like truly relate with people around me, there was a certain level of the dark night of the soul that was kind of like going through. So I was doing a certain level of shadow work, which led me to finding Wim Hof on YouTube. And like
And for
it was
those that
just
don't
like,
know, and for those
yeah,
that don't know, what is shadow work?
shadow work is pretty much being able to reflect on the deeper levels of healing, the deeper levels of emotional trauma, the deeper levels of algorithms and subconscious uh your subconscious reality, your spirit, your the spirit realm, or the subconscious reality, the emotional reality, or the levels of the mind that are very subtle, or just even like when I say the word like flower, what comes to mind? What
Mm,
imagination originally comes to mind? Like when I say flower, or when I say flower, like flower, what
mm,
algorithm is different when I say those two that comes to mind? So to be able to really be the architect of your subconscious reality is the shadow work. And there's a level to any type of light work that is going to have to be balanced with that level of shadow work, or you will be out of balance. And so I was pretty much like feeling like I was like the lightest person I knew, but it didn't
mm-hmm,
feel the best at the time. Like I didn't feel like satisfied with it. So there was a level of like, okay, you gotta have to like actually do some shadow work or some dark work to kind of just feel like, why aren't you satisfied on a deeper
mm,
level? Why are you um like you're feeling free and like a free spirit and feeling light, and you can go out in the sun and you won't burn and stuff like
mm-hmm,
that, but you aren't content yet. And so there's a certain level of inner work, practically, we can call it like that, inner work that still needs to be done. And so I
right,
was just trying to get more into meditation, and then Wim Hof, which is this guy that has been around for a decade or two, went to the East, learned some breathing techniques, brought it back to the West, and created a thing that allowed people to excel through the breathing techniques on their physical journey and their inner journeys. And so I tried it once, and I was just blown away by how I was able to reach a certain level of stillness through the breath work. It was like I was meditating for t- a lot of times, but there wasn't a certain level of like threshold that I could pass. But then I
right,
got the
right.
breath work with Wim Hof, and literally, like I remember like my one of the flings that I had. I tried to tell her, like, she was from Hawaii. She was like very hippie like, and I tried to tell her, I was like, yo, I feel like I like I felt like I know what unity is now. I feel like we can heal the world now. And she was like, "Nah, you're crazy, bro. Like you're going through it. Like I pray for you." And I was like, "Nah, bro. Like I just did some breath work, and I really feel the experience of passing that threshold in my meditation. And I feel like everybody can get there because I just did, you know, 10 minutes of breathing, of deep breathing, and so." That led to that was pretty much like the junk vegan for me. Like the Wim Hof technique was like the junk vegan for me,
Right.
where I started to actually understand, like, oh, I just opened up the first door. Now the different levels of how the breath and the mind and the emotions are all correlated, and how the breath is like the intermediary between the different subtle levels of the mind are all able to be managed, opened up realms to the world of what prana is and what chi is, and what being able to create such a peaceful mind that you live in the subtle energy field with the breath and such. That slowly started to trickle in after I was hooked on the Wim Hof for a couple months and was like, yo, like I'm blasting off every day. I'm feeling good and I'm feeling super charged up by all this breath work. And I feel like I just want to share this with the world. What's next in this study of the unseen, the metaphysical, or just the subtle energy field with what I'm studying as far as like the occult and the esoteric, and what I'm actually practicing with the breath work and the deeper levels of meditation. What is next? And so pretty much what was after that was just actually grounding into this. So like I've opened up the doors, but I don't have anybody to reflect on this with. I'm still kind of living the hood. I'm trying to attract my tribe and actually be around people that can try this stuff out with me, live this reality with me. And
Right.
there's a certain level of like, yeah, you just planted the seed in the ground. Now we're starting to sprout out of the ground, but there's a whole maturation of this tree that's looking to evolve. So that just started the literally like the sprout is finally out of the shadow work phase, and I'm making sense with some practical things, like practical daily healing work with practical study of the deeper wisdom. And now I'm at a point where I'm out of the ground. I've gotten some roots. Now it's time to actually grow the whole tree.
That's beautiful. So while you were just like, going through this whole transformation journey, and even after, you started that sprout, just so maybe people can get some like clarity and maybe even relate, did you still have like, being in the hood still going through this, did you have any like relapses or like backslides during this? And how did you, and if so, how did you like pull yourself back into alignment?
Mhm.
When that would happen.
I would say my relapses and my backslides were with my associations. So, like, as I was the only one that I knew that was vegan or plant based, and like living off of the breath work and the light and stuff like that on a daily basis. Not necessarily like living off of it, but like there's a certain like, okay, every single day I'm cultivating more and more energy from this. I was around people that weren't about any of that. They just thought I was just kind of like I was always weird and
Uh-huh.
always could like fit into every single category. Whether I'd be
Right.
hanging out with the goons and the thugs, or I'd be, kind of cool with some of the skateboarders and whatnot, or kind of cool with the fashion people, or
Right.
definitely cool with the athletes as well. I can fit in. And so um people always thought of me as like very mutable, but now I'm kind of getting a little bit more mystical with the shits. And so it got me to a point where I didn't know who to relate with too much. And so I started like attracting newer people into my life and
Hmm.
trying to just experiment with people. But I started to just keep on recognizing that like people haven't gone through a certain level of clarity from the deeper levels of meditation, from the deeper levels of cleaner eating, from the deeper levels of uh, just being sober from alcohol and marijuana and such. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I would relapse. I would like get with a girl and try her out, and just like recognize like I didn't do any vetting of like how deep she is into these things that I'm into, and so it'd be a whole like emotional swing with this girl. Boom, now I'm swinging with her, and I'm in it to win it with her, but she's not in it to win it with herself, at least to the point where I'm at. And so it would bring on a certain level of stagnation and other aspects of reality as far as like finances and my own
Hmm.
like level of progression. And I'm meeting levels of contentment and satisfaction, which is a level of like a level to enlightenment for sure, but still just on my own journey. But there's just a level of stagnation that kept having to come through with the reflection of the other, and
Right.
the reflection of like, okay, what are you going to do in the world now? Like, how are you going to, actually live a reality that is going to reflect this. So over time, as I was experimenting with newer people from this new vibrational state, there was a lot of reflections that, hey, as you're getting lighter, you're gonna have to still remain one with working with the shadow self or the shadow body, and remain like keep that balance of the shadow work as much as you are doing all this light work, and the people that would come into my reality would always reflect like there's still a lot of shadow work to do. If you're really trying to get a lot lighter, you're just gonna have to maintain that balance. And so it wasn't necessarily like ever like huge backslides, but I did see
Mhm.
myself in newer situations where I thought I would never be in, for sure. Like whether it's just like in a relationship that didn't ever really reflect what I was ever really going for. But now I'm
Mhm.
like with a girl that is like, I'm like, I don't know how I am here with you, but it's kind of cool. But at the same time, looking back, I'm like, it's just more chaos. And I think it was more of just a trying to embrace chaos type of nature. Or I'm like, I'm living in a environment that is kind of cool. Like maybe I'm like in a mansion and I'm living there for free, but also at the same time, like I'm with like people that are doing some serious drugs in
Mm.
one of the rooms in the mansion. And so I'm like, what is this? Like this is not the piece that I'm like really looking for. This is just like giving me a hint of the magic that I can attract, but not the full thing. So the
Right.
backslides were always progressive, but definitely like they were always there to be like, all right, if you want to take one step forward, you might have to take two steps back and look at like this aspect of life that you haven't looked at before.
Gotcha. That's a lot of that makes sense. A lot of clarity right there. Yeah, so I'm gonna just kind of like paraphrase. So you were
Mm,
in the hood, just eating lots of junk food, standard American diet, smoking weed, doing some drugs, hanging with girls, hanging with friends, that
yeah,
nothing was serving your spiritual journey.
the whole
And
nine. Yeah.
yeah, the whole nine to now. I want to just fast forward to now. Like, what is your reality like now? What is your nervous system like? What is your mindset on? What are your mornings like?
hmm Okay, so now, I mean, 10 years down the line after having my spiritual awakening or journey begin, um, now I am dedicated to only living in mainly paradise like environments, or very zen, tranquil, serene like environments. Like I've lived in
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii almost 5 years on and off. I've lived in Central America and in the beautiful paradises on the beaches in Central America for like 2 years. I am at a point right now where if I wanted to stop eating, I can stop eating whenever I want. If I wanted to stop drinking, I can stop drinking whenever I want. And yeah, there is a level of like, because I am eating and drinking still, there will be a certain level of coagulation into that reality. But I've already cultivated enough energy within inside of my meridians and my light body. And as long as I do the shadow work to continue maintaining this light body, I don't technically need to eat or drink anything right now. I only get on social media to promote this lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't consume extra data that is just junk data that is just for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly like one of the most fun things to do for me is to go into a meditative state where I can reach a level of samadhi, a nirvikalpa samadhi, one of the highest states of samadhi, where I am in full reminder and full remembrance of the self realization that has been of these last 10 years to get to this point where I actually recognize unity for what it really is. Like I've literally cultivated unity to this point where there's no reason for me to not be content with anything in life. There's no reason for me to go through challenges of the ego to certain levels. Like when they come, I can recognize them, and then I can let them pass like a cloud over an ocean. Um, and so yeah,
Okay.
nowadays I'm mostly in intermittent fasting until afternoon sometime, and then I'm trying to only eat or drink fruits, maybe some vegetables, maybe some herbs, because like those alone are so stimulating to my sensitivity levels that
Hmm.
it's so much entertainment, and there's so much joy and experience that I get out of that. There's so much experience that I get out of that because my glands are clean, my organs are cleaned, my fascia has released um the traumas and the tensions. My nervous system is very deep. I can hold my breath almost at any moment for at least a minute. Um, and so there's a level of energy flowing through me, and there's a level of mind that is very small that can block that energy that's flowing through me at all times. So that's the light body that has been cultivated nowadays. So I went from, like you were saying, the whole nine of the hood, like being very dense, doing all this stuff with the opposite sex and all these drugs and constant turmoil, to now it's constant tranquility. Now it's constant self remembrance that actuality, I'm not this body, I am not this universe, I am not any of this light. I am only the feeling of bliss. I am only the feeling of God. I am only the feeling of unity. Whatever
Hmm.
that is to you, that is the true self. And that is not just me as a personality I am, but that is every single thing in existence has a true self that is bliss itself, has a true self that is the self that we can get caught up in being the physical body or the physical world that we live in or the personality that we live in and the times that we live in or even the imaginations in the subconscious mind that we live in. We can get caught up in all those things, but all those things are the mind. But we are not the mind, we are not the body. With inside of the mind, we are the self, the witness, the awareness that is just watching this dance, is just watching the poetry, is just watching the rhythms of nature. But we are not even that. We are just the creator and the witnesser of it. And everything that goes on within this reality now is just for us to experience, not for us to have any attachment to, just for us to be positively in a sense of gratitude for the experience. And so, yeah, now there's a deep level of serenity, a deep level of serendipity, a deep level of constant growth within inside of the universe to grow the multiverse, to grow the omniverse, which is just all a growth of self and a remembrance of what self truly is. And that's truly the only thing that nowadays, when I am talking to people, is that I'm looking to get to in the conversation is that if you can remember who you truly are,
Hmm.
then you will remember unity. And inside of that unity, there is no suffering, there is no struggling, there is no identity with you being anything that doesn't reflect that bliss of unity, that joy of
Hmm.
unity, that peace of unity.
Wow, that's a powerful perspective. That actually sparked a lot of questions in me, but I do want to just go back to you said that you only kind of, place yourself in paradise. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that and like what is your perspective of paradise and why? And is all these things that you're talking about, is it easier to kind of have access and connection to these the tranquility and the peace and just the connection to your breath and in paradise, or can these still be done outside of paradise? Like what's your perspective on that kind of.
Great question. So in Taoism, they say that the hermit goes onto the mountain until the hermit is able to bring the mountain down back into the city. So I live in
Mm,
paradise as much as I can, which means that I'm at beaches, that I'm involved with nature, and I'm outside all of my reality. Like I try to live outside nonstop, and I try not to be indoors at all because I have a body that can endure literally being outside at all times without smelling or feeling any of the detox symptoms or looking bad. My body has been equipped to be this plasmic being that can take the energy of all this beautiful greenery outside and maintain a certain level of freshness and a certain level of purity and cleanliness by just living outside. And I try to be around the ocean as much as possible because the ocean is a reflection of the cosmic ocean being the actual bliss of infinity and eternity. And so um, I try to be around the oceans as much as possible, all those negative ions, constantly hitting the body and charging up the body with its balance of electrical pull and creating more of a magnetic toroidal field in the aura. Um, and not having a certain level of pressure from the societal religious structures on earth to eat, to sleep,
mm,
to drink, right? But then there's a level of knowing that as you cultivate this more, you are cultivating a certain sense of consciousness, not only just with the body slowly adapting to a level of peace, but the consciousness that can help you remember that no matter where you go, whether it is reflecting and looking, having your mirror neurons within inside of your brain, looking at the greenery of the trees, which activates your heart chakra more, or looking at the
mm,
different colors within inside of the fruits and the trees, which activates other
mm,
chakras more, or going into uh a city that is going to have your mirror neurons looking at squares and boxes and
mm,
commercials to eat and all these fast food restaurants and sick and unhealthy people that haven't even started their spiritual journey at all
mm,
um in this lifetime. There's a certain level of, and when I say spiritual, I'm really talking about their breath journey, really doing just certain level of breath work and letting the breath grow. That's the journey. What I'm talking about most of the time when I'm talking about spiritual journey is allowing their breath to cultivate deeper. And when we say deeper, maybe just literally longer breaths. You know what I mean? Like
right.
it doesn't have to be so like woo woo. It just literally can mean like you can literally take a longer inhale and a longer exhale to the point where you're taking now 1 minute inhales and 1 minute exhales. Now you're taking 3 minute inhales, 3 minute exhales. Like
Right.
that's the cultivation. So when you haven't, when you can be in a city and you see the majority of people, 99% of people haven't even started that, but your mirror neurons aren't over trumping your consciousness that can allow your mind to remain in this bliss and tranquility. That's the cultivation of the master. Until you're a master and you can leave the mountains, leave the emptiness of nature and bring that emptiness, that silence, that stillness, that darkness with you, that samadhi with you back into the hood, you haven't
Mm-hmm.
obtained full mastery. And so that's the life now is being out in nature and living in paradise as much as I can until I get to the point where, and I try it out, I experiment with it as much as I can, being in the cities and maintaining
Mm-hmm.
that supreme state of supreme bliss, no matter
Mm-hmm.
if I'm in the cities. So that's the main ontology of what is going on when I'm in paradise is maintaining the cultivation so I can grow the consciousness and remembrance that city, paradise, it don't matter. None of this is me. Body, none of it's me. Mind, none of it is me. I'm immovable. I'm unchangeable. I am that bliss, that unity, that stillness that is unchangeable no matter what light spectrum or sound spectrum or wave spectrum I might move in. I'm still that same thing. So that's the cultivation of the paradise energy.
I love that. Okay, cool. That really provides a lot of clarity. Um, so you said something about like you don't need to. I want to ask, it might be two questions in one, but so you said
So,
that you can go without eating and you can go without drinking and stuff like that and just kind of living off the solar energy in the prana or the air around us. So
mhm.
is that like is that what you consider maybe your evolution or evolution in general? So like what is
Right.
like, your definition of evolution in terms of that, or even, not
Mhm. So like that's pretty much like the fall of Atlantis for me. It's like when Atlantis fell, when we was a higher level of civilization, where we had our pyramids activated and there was free energy all around the world and such. There
Mhm.
wasn't sewer systems. There wasn't a need for consumption because there was so much. There was a vastness of energy in the air. It's almost like when Kobe Bryant is in the zone and it's the fourth quarter. He's not thinking about a cheeseburger, right?
Nah.
But imagine being Kobe Bryant in that zone about the subtle energy. So instead of just trying to score the basket, you're in that zone about subtle energy all
Mm.
throughout the day, or these alpha waves are playing out all throughout the day. So we were at that state. And so when we're talking about evolution or revolution, back into re-evolving, back into a reality where we need less and are satisfied more, we want less and are content more. Yeah, there's a level of this is the technology of every single person's body is that the mitochondria within inside of our DNA are actually pumping 40,000 volts per millisecond of protons into our adenosine triphosphate, our ATP, within inside of our cells, so it can convert to free energy already. So, in actuality, science has not proven not one thing that says that we actually get all of our energy from food. The energy that we are actually getting is the good vibrations of living on Earth that are charging up our protons within inside of our mitochondria, within inside of our DNA, so that that DNA can pump energy or create and transform energy into the cells. Now I know that's like the opposite end of the spectrum of where most people are at is like, how do we get more energy from food? How do we get more energy from the sun? How do we get more energy from the earth? Right? But in actuality, if you look at even smaller than the mitochondria, you go to the atom and you see that all atoms are self nucleotized. They are
Mm.
already creating their own free energy. And so if you go to the smallest element of what energy is, nothing is needing another thing because there is a quantum field that is already full of free energy, and every single level of spectrum that you look at is just a ripple of that free energy spectrum. And so naturally, as humans remember that we are just in a dream and we are the projectors of the dream, we are the gods of the dream, each individual itself is dreaming this dream, and actually the dream isn't needing anything to dream it. There is just like a dream. Like you don't have to like take a specific potion of a pill to like, okay, I'm gonna go into a dream. No, you're just relaxed enough and sleep enough to dream that dream. That's the same thing for this reality. If you're relaxed enough and you're lucid enough in this dream, you don't actually need anything for the dream to continue and for the dream to grow because it's made up
Mm.
out of the dream time energy. And I know this
Mm.
is getting to a certain level of uh, beyond the religious thinking mindset, but this is the actual level of peace. This is the actual level of tranquility and science in actuality. Like I'm really only speaking science. So like when I first started my journey, one thing that I was starting a lot was the holographic universe. And the holographic universe practically says that our brains are, or let's look at it like this. all of our five senses are not coming from an external reality, and now our brains are receiving the codes of those neurological synapses. In actuality, those neurological synapses, those sparks of electrons, are actually creating and projecting the actual reality. And so we
Wow.
what we actually see isn't like codes that are coming into ours and then our brain is processing them. In actuality, our brains are projecting the whole reality, because guess what? Our brains are surrounded in darkness, right? Our brains are
Right.
literally surrounded in darkness. So our brain doesn't see these things. Our brain doesn't feel
Right.
these things or taste these things. It's literally just a code of a neurological fire. It's literally fire that is creating not only the whole projection of the dream, but also you have to understand as well is that if the reality truly is nothing more than a code of things to allow the brain to process, sparks of neurological firing for the brain to process so that the brain can create a reality, you also have to understand that the brain doesn't even exist. Because if the body doesn't exist because the brain is just processing the body to exist, then where's the brain at? The brain
Mm.
doesn't even exist at that point, because the body doesn't even exist at that point, because the brain is technically creating the body, or the mind is creating the body, right? And
Mm.
so the holographic universe science gave me the unity science, the science of truly being able to be unified with my reality as the dreamer, as the God, and truly get beyond the religious dogma that there is something outside that I need to be using all of my energy to look for outside, but actually know that neither the body is neither the body nor the brain actually exists more than just a dream of firing off synapses within inside of the darkness that is creating the dream. So pretty much like the same way that when you go into a dream, you as an
Mm-hmm.
individual, you are without you witnessing that dream, the dream that you had last night, without you witnessing that dream, does it exist? No,
Mm.
because you didn't witness it. Nobody else knew about it, right? And so that's the
Mm.
same thing with this dream. If you don't witness this dream, it doesn't exist. And so that's true
Wow.
unity, because without you actually witnessing and being here, this whole world that you live in actually doesn't exist. So with you being able to witness it and have awareness of it is the creation of it, meaning that creator, you are the creator of it, you are the god of it. And yeah, there are levels and dimensions and higher faculties within side of that game like structure that creation and awareness and witness can create, like higher dimensions that we get into when we go into deeper levels of meditation, or deeper levels of even thinking about the vast infinite imagination and multiverses, and literally this being one planet out of 40 billion within inside of our Milky Way alone that has water
Mm-hmm.
on it that can sustain life. 40 billion that emulate the same type of oceanic sense of Earth-like nature with inside of this Milky Way alone. That's just one galaxy. That's not even the whole universe. And so when we think about the possibilities of different species, different planets, different aliens, or extraterrestrials, extra terra, it just means anything outside of this Earth or more than just this Earth, right? There's infinite vastness that you can play with inside of the mind, right? But to
Mm-hmm.
just have the basic principles and foundation that it it, it is all being here because you are dreaming it. Without you witnessing it, it doesn't exist. The same way last night when you had a dream, without you being there to witness that dream, it wouldn't have existed.
Mm. Wow. So following that, do you just think that the way we manifest things and see things and create things in our bodies or just in this life all basically just comes back to us creating it with our imagination and feeling it, feeling that certain frequency? Does it all just come back to that, basically?
Yes. So there's a certain level of there's a certain level of like the more naturally you get more aware of that consciousness that you are the dreamer and the imaginator, right? I love
Hmm.
Beats calling me. Let me just I'm gonna let it ring. The more you have that awareness that you are the imaginator, then the more that naturally you're just content with being that creative being. And so instead of always consuming, you'll be more in that, like the mind of that consciousness will permeate the body, and the body will feel more and more like the producer of the reality
Mm.
rather than the consumer of the reality, or the manifester of the whole reality rather than just the subjectedness with inside of the objectivity. Rather, you will feel like the objectivity that is constantly flowing inside of subjectivity.
Mm. That makes perfect sense. Okay. And then I think you slightly touched on this. You said even when you're like out here, you still kind of feel or observe the thoughts come in that maybe you don't align with, kind of egoistic. So you
Yeah,
think these things are just like, do you think these things are just like everyone's thoughts and maybe around you, and it's just like a whole, you just
yeah.
kind of pick and choose which one you want to identify with? And do you think that they'll always be there no matter how much of a state of enlightenment you reach? Do you think you'll still be able to kind of, or even if they're not intentionally, do you think they can, these egoistic thoughts can kind of come in still?
They'll always be in the spectrum of imagination because imagination is already there. Like we've already imagined that there's a certain thing called hell. Like there's already a hell forever. No, it'll always be there, but you get to choose your algorithm of how much of that do you actually want to be in your subjective claiming reality. Like how much do you want to actually claim, like, like, oh yeah, like I am part of that, or do you want to just really be in that uh more state of like I'm neither heaven nor hell. I get to experience any of it, but I am not claiming that I am any of it. So the more that you are detached from both the heaven and the hell, the more
Mhm.
that naturally the flow of heaven will be more attracted to you because heaven is closer to that 0 point state. Heaven is like, like hell is just like further away in the distortions of things, further away in the lightness of things. It's more in the dark, not darkness, but heaviness of things. Hell is. Heaven is
Mm.
getting closer and closer to that 0 point state of full unity and fully being one with the ultimate, infinite, supreme bliss of eternity and the depths of infinite imagination and infinite multiverses or infinite omni or the one omniverse, the one unity of all dreams, right? You get closer and closer to that with heaven just from being more and more in a practical state of every single day of my just practice being less and less identified with either heaven or hell, or being like, because in the Buddhist text they even say that the gods still live in samsara. There's many gods and many creator gods in higher dimensions that still live in a certain state of reincarnation in samsara. So to truly be outside of samsara, or just have the notion that your mind can be in a state of no mind and truly attached to the true self, the true witnesser, the true creator, the more naturally your algorithms are going to pull you to live in a reality that's closer and closer to that paradise or that heaven, which is more of that producer of the reality, more of that God of the reality, more of that just witnesser and imaginator of the supreme cosmic intelligence. And that's going to be less and less and less over time, less and less hell and less thoughts that are heavy enough to even like persuade you to think that you can identify with the ego thoughts.
Right. Wow, it's very exciting. Very exciting stuff right there. I
Yeah.
don't want to take too much of your time and just make this digestible for people. We're definitely going to need a part two. So I'm going to
Yeah.
wrap this up and ask you just like one or two more questions. Um,
Cool.
Beautiful clarity, by the way. And so if you could just give your younger self from where you're at right now one sentence, what would it be?
I'd tell it one word, and that's just relax.
Hmm,
Relax.
just
Relax. Like
relax.
if I can have that mantra playing out, relax, relax, relax. That's all it would
Hmm,
take. Because in actuality, the body is like everything in nature already. It just needs enough relaxation, enough stillness to grow. Like everything is relaxed enough to grow. It's not
hmm,
everything is not like out here trying to work a 9 to 5 to grow. Things in nature that
hmm,
are literally growing a millimeter every single second or whatever. You know,
hmm.
like it's from them being relaxed enough to, open enough to, loose enough to, and so that would be the main thing. And obviously, like in the next call, we can go into the depths of like how the body needs to be alkaline enough and hydrated enough to relax, and how the body needs to have enough energy to relax, and how unity is like kind of painful. As you get more and more unity, it's like kind of painful because it's like the ego deaths are happening, and so you're letting go of
Right.
stuff, right? And we could talk about all that next time, but unity can be painful. Like when you're on a trip in the beginning of your a psychedelic trip, you might be kind of scared and uncomfortable because there's so much unity firing out at you that it's like, oh, damn, all this unity is coming so fast. That's the same thing that is looking for you to experience as you're slowly becoming more and more relaxed. But that's why it is just a pressure cooker type of timing, a very subtle like thing that over time you relax and you relax and you relax more. That's what I would say. I mean, I would also kind of say hydrate. Maybe the sentence would be relax and hydrate, but I know that word has some misconstruence. Even the same thing as relax, everything has a certain level of misinterpretation, but I think relaxation might be universal enough.
I love that. And you might have honestly answered this last question I had for you, but I was just gonna say, for the last question, what's like one thing you learned about healing that you wish more men understood?
Mm. Um, Men understanding about healing, really in general, just that like men and healing. I would say in general that healing can be masculine. There's a masculinity to healing. I know there's like a lot of like when I look at the hood and like think about why they aren't healing, it's because they're trying to maintain a certain level of masculine ego. But in
Mm,
actuality, healing is very masculine. Healing takes levels of discipline and masculinity that men in the hood don't have. They don't have that level of discipline. They don't have that level of poisons. They don't have that level of strength. So to actually be like the top G or whatever, the big boss, you're gonna have to like have that level of masculinity or manliness to actually get to that level of healing. You know what I mean? So that's the it's not the superstars or it's not the dark demons that are like living the best life. It's the ones that are the most balanced. So you're gonna need that level of masculinity and manliness to even get to that level of being the most balanced. So that's the main thing I would say to men is that you want to be a man, let's see how you heal yourself. You know what I mean? There's all this data out here. We're living in the age of Aquarius where there's all this data out here. How are you going to take that and actually optimize it to be resourceful with it and utilize it and actually see it be effective and efficient?
wow, that was powerful, bro.
Hmm.
Seriously, I don't have words for that. Hey,
The next time.
thank you. Yeah, yeah, part two coming soon. You guys, I'm gonna link his Instagram down below. Hit his DMs for questions. You guys want us to answer, want him to answer on part two. You can comment down on this video as well. Baba, thank you for keeping it so real, so
You know
grounded,
what it is.
so embodied. If you're watching this and something resonated deep, that means it was for you and it was not a coincidence, not an accident. And you're just in the process of remembering your true self. Healing is real. presence is powerful and breath is the bridge. So y'all go follow Baba on Instagram. I'm gonna link his page below. He's one of the realest voices out here doing the inner work and reflecting it on the outer. Until next time, you guys, stay connected, stay grounded, stay breathing. Peace and blessings. Happy healing. Cheers.
Cheers, cheers, cheers. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Joy, joy, joy. Bliss, bliss, bliss. 10x now. Remember, the only perfection is patience. Enjoy yourselves.
Cheers.